Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, September 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 1 day. The game against Michigan in 85 days. Boy, I can remember back right after the Peach Bowl when it was 300 and some odd days to the Indiana game. And boy, that seemed like a long time ago. Now we'll be in the car to Bloomington in about 24 hours and watching the Buckeyes a little longer than that. So should be a fun weekend there. We'll have full coverage, of course, of that game at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But that's not the only thing going on this weekend. Marc Givler of BuckeyeHuddle.com is down south watching a couple of highly rated Ohio State commits, a couple five-star Ohio State commits. He's going to be seeing them in action in the next day or so. We're going to be talking to him about that, about a five-star defensive lineman who's announcing a little later on today, and maybe even a little bit about this year's Buckeye team and a little look ahead at what to expect coming up this season from some of the young guys. But Mark, I guess let's start with, we always start with the quarterback, right? Everyone always wants to hear about the quarterback. So let's start, five-star quarterback, Air Noland. You're going to be seeing him this weekend. This is obviously not the first time you've seen him. You and Kevin have been down south a few times already this year, but he's off to an impressive start already this year. What are you looking forward to seeing from him when you get to see him in person?
Yeah, I mean, we've watched him at camps. He's been tremendous all offseason. We know he can play football. He led his team to a state championship last year, put up great numbers. But yeah, I just want to kind of see how he's looking in terms of, processing, reading defenses, and just kind of how things look when the bullets are live. We've seen a lot of him throwing against either throwing against air or kind of the 7-on-7 type of stuff. So we haven't had a chance in a little while. I know Kevin got to see a little bit of his spring scrimmage, but he didn't play a lot that night. So just kind of looking forward to getting a full game and just see how he's been developing here since I haven't seen him throw, I guess, since May.
So, I mean, it sounds like there's a couple things we're kind of grading incomplete there in terms of in-person scouting. Are there any obvious areas where he's got to make a step forward, or is he kind of college-ready-ish already?
I mean, he checks a lot of the boxes as far as being college ready. I don't think a true freshman quarterback is probably never quite ready, but he's someone who he's started, he's got a lot of starts under his belt by the time he gets to Ohio State. He's a winner. He's got the championships. He's got the statistics. So if you're a stats guy, he's got those. And he's got all the physical attributes and measurables you'd be looking for. So there's nothing that I personally need to see out of him, and I know he's a tremendous leader in kids. So there's nothing really any questions I have about him so much. I'm just very interested to see him and just see how he does.
Just from a scouting perspective, his first game of the season was obviously on national TV, so we all saw that. He was very impressive in that game and was playing very high level competition in that one as well. When you're watching a guy in person, what do you see seeing a guy in person that you don't necessarily get watching on TV?
You get a much better feel for two things. You get a feel for arm strength. I think there's a lot of people you'll read like, oh yeah, I was watching him on TV. What an arm! I'm like, can you really tell how strong a guy's arm is on TV? Because I've had people tell me like they don't think Kyle McCord has like the strongest arm in the world. I'm like, I would argue that Kyle McCord's had the strongest arm on the roster last year. So I don't know if like something that doesn't translate well to TV or if it's just people that see things differently. But you get a really good feel for just kind of how the velocity, just the arm strength, and how well they're spinning the ball. Sometimes you don't get to see that on TV. You can't really always tell if it's if it's a tight spiral or kind of what that is. You get to see a lot of that, and generally, where I like to go up top, especially if I'm watching a quarterback, you'll get a broader view of the field. So you should be able to kind of see what they're seeing to an extent in terms of throwing and reading defenses and things like that. Some of those things you don't really get like that full view from a TV camera. So those are just some of the things. And then obviously for certain guys, not a problem for me with air, but just certain guys, you do like to kind of see how they prepare for the game and warm-ups, just how they interact, how they are on the sidelines with their teammates, those types of things. Those are also kind of little cool things you get to see.
All right, so that's one of the Ohio State five-star commits for the class of 2024 who you're going to be seeing this weekend. You're also going to be seeing Eddrick Houston, and you have been about as high on Eddrick Houston as anyone I have seen or heard anywhere going back a year, close to a year. I mean, you have talked about him as potentially the top overall player in the class, at least as far as the guys you've seen. And that was long before he was committed to Ohio State or even necessarily, a strong Ohio State lean. So this was not, the Ohio State guy being a homer. This is that was your analysis long before he was in the class. So what are you excited to see about Eddrick Houston this weekend when you go see Buford?
Just watching him let it rip for 4 quarters. We saw his spring game. He played, I don't know, maybe a half at the most, and was just completely disruptive. Just plays with unbelievable effort. I know there's the whole, is he a 3-tech thing? I really don't see that at all. He is so flexible, so explosive around the edge. He's a unique player. Most of these guys at his size in high school cannot do the things he can do on the outside. And that's why I think there is a lot of 3-tech talk with him, is because I think people are just reading his height and weight and assuming, because that's where most guys his size end up going at the next level, and he's just very different on that. So that's all. I enjoyed the show back in May when we watched their spring game. It was really impressive, and with everything being full go and a real game, so there's no limitations or anything like that. He's gonna be playing all the time. I'm just ready to see him kind of turn it loose and see if he'll give me one of those dominating performances that I've seen over the years out of some of the other 5-star type guys at his position that I've covered, who ended up going on and having great NFL careers too. So it's always fun looking back and remembering Eddie Goldman or Adolphus Washington or Nick Bosa or someone like that, and how you saw them dominate, and then it just they just keep going up the ladder and doing the same thing.
So having a player like that on a high school team might seem a little unfair when you're going up against just, normal high school athletes on the other side of the ball. But Buford has three 5-star players on their team. They've also got Dylan Raiola, the former Ohio State commit, current Georgia commit, the quarterback for the 2024 class. They also have KJ Bolden, who is a 5-star safety who was looking at Ohio State and then didn't commit to Ohio State. He's committed to Alabama now, I believe.
Florida State.
Oh, Florida State. That's right.
Yes, the late surprise.
Yeah, that one changed. First of all, is this outside of like an IMG type school? Is this the most high end talent you've seen on a high school? 3 5-stars in one class for Dylan Raiola did not grow up in Buford, Georgia. He's moved around a little bit, but is this the most talented team you've seen of a non IMG type school?
It's up there. Glenville had a couple of monsters going back about 10, 15 years. I'm trying to like rack my brain real fast on this. I've seen some pretty good teams in the South. I've seen, that American Heritage team recently. Shamna Madonna's team's been pretty good, but some of those are private schools, some of them aren't. But yeah, Buford's talent level and the way they run their program is right up there. I guess the other school, look, I've seen St. John Bosco, so that's another. If you've seen St. John Bosco, you've seen as good as it gets, pretty much at the high school level. So but Buford's in that conversation. It's an unbelievable program. They have an unbelievable facility. It's like a little. They have like their own town. It's like going to its own little city is just like kind of their facility area, and it's a great place to go. And they've got a whole bunch of talent. Fortunately, it won't be at home this time. It'll be on the road. But it's going to be up there. It's definitely going to be up there for sure. And adding Raiola is an interesting layer for many reasons. But will be nice. It'll actually be kind of cool to see Air Raiola on Friday night, Air on Saturday night. I'm sure people will be asking me who's better after that, and I'll have to make some decision on that. I'll have to take my 48 minutes of evaluation of both of them, or really 24 minutes of evaluation of both of them, and make a decision, I guess.
Oh boy, I'm already excited for the headline next week on YouTube. Air Noland versus Dylan Raiola. Who's the real number one quarterback in 2024? It's going to get a bunch of clicks on YouTube. I'm sure it'll make exactly one of the fan bases very happy and one of the fan bases very unhappy. Can't wait. You have that to look forward to. Oh, we have a couple football games to get through before we get to there. Did want to also talk to you about a new in-state offer for the class of 2025 for Ohio State. That is Brandon Caesar. Anytime they're offering a guy in-state more than a year out, that's usually, to me, a pretty good indication they are real high on this guy, and they view him as someone who could be a significant addition. Let people know a little bit about Brandon Caesar and where things stand with he and Ohio State right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player. Really good wrestler. Missed some time early in his career with an injury, so I think that slowed things down a little bit as far as Ohio State was concerned, instead of maybe offering him last year or the summer. But he's definitely one of the top guys in Ohio. Is he an inside guy? Is he an outside guy? That's going to be the question. I tend to think he might be a 3-tech, but he's literally just started his junior year, so I'm going to see I kind of reserve the right to change my mind on that one over the next 12 to 18 months, but maybe a 3-tech. Again, very powerful kid, really good wrestler, can rush the passer, so he's going to fit that Larry Johnson mold, whether it's inside or outside of kind of that get off and getting after the quarterback. Big-bodied kid, so to me, it's very interesting. We're agonizing over defensive line recruiting a lot right now. Certainly 2024 right now is the big priority. But if you look at 25 in Ohio, I think Ohio is going to help them a little bit next year, or has the potential to help them next year with Brandon Caesar. And then you've got a guy who may be an edge. He's kind of he's a linebacker edge right now, Justin Hill out of Winton Woods, who I think is one of the nation's best prospects. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. So those are two guys right in their backyard that I think could help them in the defensive front four down the road. So hopefully for Ohio State, they're able to get those guys. I think they're going to get Brandon Caesar for sure. I think they are the betting favorite for Justin Hill, but as I kind of told someone, asked me about him the other day on our board, I said, betting favorite, but not a layup. Not your just like, oh, all you have to do is not screw this up. They've got to recruit him a little bit. But in good shape for both, and those would be two huge pickups for their defensive front seven if they can make that happen.
Yeah, boy, it feels like it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about the fact that they needed a strong class at corner, and boy, they've got two in-state corners in 2024, and Aaron Scott and Bryce West, and one of them felt like a layup, and one of them they needed maybe a little bit more work, and they ended up getting both of those guys. So we'll see if that holds true on the defensive line for in-state for the pair of guys you just talked about for 2025. One guy on the defensive line in 2024 who's committing on Friday is Dominic McKinley. He is a 5-star out of Texas. Here's a little hint on how we stack these shows. If Ohio State felt like they were, a layup to get a 5-star defensive end later in the day, that probably would have been higher in the show rundown. But Mark, what are you hearing about Dominic McKinley right now?
I'm sticking with my best guess of Texas, and as we record this, I got maybe another 12 to 18 hours to change my if I hear something different. But I haven't heard anything to get me off of Texas at this point. I think Ohio State's done a really good job there. I think they've made this more interesting than anyone really thought they could 4 or 5 months ago. I don't think he's going to LSU, which makes it even more interesting if you're hoping that Ohio State can get this kind of Justin Scott type of surprise part 2 or whatever. I really don't think it's going to be LSU. I think Texas is a school right now that I've heard the most about. Someone from Oklahoma reached out to me the other day and said Oklahoma's starting to feel like they've picked up some momentum, which is fascinating because a lot of people thought this was Texas, LSU, and Ohio State. So now Oklahoma's trying to push. And it's all these different people are confident in certain schools, and there's all this varying information out, and the kid doesn't talk to anybody. So I'm like, how is this possible? So it's interesting. I'm going to continue to dig into this up until the very last minute, but my gut right now is Texas.
Covering recruiting in 2023 seems like it's so much fun. All right, let's get you off the recruiting. Let's talk about some actual football happening this weekend and this season. Hopefully a little easier to predict than recruiting these days. We were talking before the show, there are a million storylines about this year's Buckeye team, but one of them is Ryan Day. When we talked to him earlier in the week, he talked about 4 true freshmen who could be real, impact players, may play a significant role at some point this season. This feels like a freshman class that might have a bigger impact than some in the past.
No question. And it's all guys, for the most part, I think, that that we expected to be this good. And it's a pleasant surprise to see how quickly it's happened. I think we all thought very highly of Luke Montgomery coming out. I think we all, obviously, I thought incredibly highly of Carnell Tate and Malik Hartford coming out as well. And those are two guys who I think are going to play more than just the standard role of getting into games late. I think Carnell Tate and Malik Hartford are going to impact their season. I really do. And that was, I know, a question. Obviously, the question with Tate was, well, there's just so many receivers. How is he possibly going to crack the rotation? Well, he's just going to be that good. He's going to force you to make him in the rotation. And with Malik Hartford, I think it was more of, there's bodies there. There's a lot of safeties that have experience there. But I think, Malik shows up, he's like 170 pounds, soaking wet. And you're like, okay, how quickly can he develop? Well, what was it, 20 pounds he's put on, I think, since he arrived in the winter. So that's there, and he hit like a Mack truck at 170, so I can't wait to see him hit somebody at 195. So, guys like that. And then I think we also knew, going back to March, April, you look at Jelani Thurman and you're like, well, wow, he's actually going to, I don't know how you're going to not play him this year. I don't know how he's going to redshirt. So and I probably am missing one or two on top of that. But yeah, Luke Montgomery is going to play, I for sure. I've heard nothing but great things about him. I've actually had a chance to talk to and see Luke at some recruiting events since he enrolled. So just kind of the progression, because obviously his brother Ryan's a 2025 prospect. So I ran into Luke a couple of times here this offseason, and you could just see the physical development. And by the time I saw him, I think it was in June, I'm like, oh, he's going to play this year, because he looked like he had been in the program for 2 or 3 years physically. He looked like he had been in mixed strength conditioning program for 2 or 3 years. And just incredible job by him and the staff of putting on the weight, but it's really good weight. He just looks solid. So that between that and maybe still kind of shuffling some things around on the offensive line, or still trying to, guys are still maybe not established yet. I think Luke's going to play a role as well, which is always difficult for a true freshman. It would be interesting to see him. He may play more as a true freshman than Paris Johnson, which is but I think that's going to be the way it works.
Yeah, and I mean, Paris was there in 2020, where that was a little bit of a wonky season, as I probably don't need to remind anyone. But yeah, I mean, by the end of that year, he was playing in the playoff when he went in at guard when guys got hurt in the CFP that year. So yeah, that's definitely one to watch, and that'll be definitely one of the interesting storylines to watch. We will be rich with storylines this weekend. As you may have heard, there's a starting quarterback, but there may be a little bit of an ongoing quarterback battle as well. That will be something we're watching this weekend in Bloomington. 5 running backs, how they juggle all that stuff, and is this really the Travion Henderson year? Because everyone seems to think it might be the Travion Henderson year. They've got some talented wide receivers. They've got some narrative around the defense and whether the defense gets better. Boy, is there going to be a lot to talk about this weekend in Bloomington and at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we will have lots of coverage on the site, lots of coverage on our YouTube channel this weekend as the Buckeyes head to Bloomington to take on Indiana for the season preview, or the season opener. And I'm guessing it'll probably be lopsided enough. Buckeyes favored by 30 or so points, so should probably see some of those true freshmen on the field in a meaningful game for the first time. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. And then, of course, lots of high school football coverage as well, as Mark goes and sees seemingly half of the 5 stars in the class of 2024 this weekend. So we'll have lots of highlights of that on our YouTube channel as well at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you're also following us at facebook.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And also our new national site, SaturdayGlory.com. We've got a whole separate network of podcasts there. Some really good shows. Daily morning show. We've got the great show with Tyler Shoemaker, talking about his rankings and going through all the point spread related stuff and power rankings and sports betting legal now in the state of Ohio. So if you're interested in that, just make sure go on your podcast platform of choice. Search Buckeye Huddle. It's all going to come up there. Make sure you subscribe to all of those shows. A 5-star rating review, which would be appreciated as well to help other folks find those shows. And then finally, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Hit that bell so you get notified, because we're going to have live shows all weekend. Lots of content coming your way. all at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle and BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.